In the oldest, darkest reaches beyond our solar system, past where sunlight is nothing more than a memory, a machine built by humans has been drifting for nearly half a century. Voyager 2, launched in 1977, wasn't built to return, only to witness. It crossed the planets, exited the heliosphere, and entered the interstellar medium as humanity's furthest emissary into the void. But while the world moved on, Voyager 2 kept listening. And last month, it spoke back, not with a technical update, not with radiation or solar data, but with something no one expected. A transmission so structured, so deliberate, and so wrong, it left experts frozen. At first, the message seemed like background static, but buried inside was a repeating burst, precise, rhythmic, unnatural. Scientists decoded it, thinking it was interference. What they found instead was terrifying, a pattern intelligent, complex, and absolutely not from Earth. And when they traced the event back to its source, they realized something was moving near Voyager 2, not drifting, not orbiting, tracking. And in that moment, the old spacecraft became something more than a machine. It became a mirror, one reflecting a truth we've long denied. Voyager 2's instruments, though outdated by today's standards, are still remarkably sensitive. They're designed to pick up the most subtle changes in plasma waves, magnetic fields, and cosmic radiation. But in a recent batch of data pulled from the Deep Space Network, a low-frequency spike appeared, one that repeated every 11.2 seconds. That's not cosmic background noise. Engineers initially dismissed it as a software glitch caused by deep space interference. But when they pulled older telemetry logs, they discovered that the same pulse had occurred once before, weeks earlier, and had been missed completely. Now, with AI-enhanced filtering tools, the data painted a disturbing picture. The pulse wasn't just recurring. It was increasing in strength, and it was coming from outside the probe. Even more chilling, the pulse appeared to carry a spectral signature, a fingerprint, if you will. Inverted hydrogen resonance, the most abundant element in the universe, but twisted. Some called it a cosmic anomaly. Others believed it was intentional tampering. But either way, the silence of deep space had been broken not by noise, but by something that knew how to speak mathematically. Using triangulation and frequency delay analysis, Mission Control determined that the source of the pulse was not stationary. In fact, it was moving along a vector parallel to Voyager 2's trajectory, almost as if it were tailing the spacecraft. But this object didn't follow any known orbital mechanics. It accelerated and decelerated in short bursts, completely defying the gravitational influence of any nearby mass. When analysts tried to simulate its path using Newtonian physics, every model failed. The object wasn't coasting. It was correcting, adjusting its speed in response to Voyager's faint transmissions. And it wasn't broadcasting in our direction. It was reflecting the signal, bouncing a modified version of Voyager's data stream back into the void like a cosmic echo chamber. Theories exploded across classified communication lines. Was it a rogue satellite from a forgotten mission? A relic of an alien civilization? A cloaked surveillance system? Whatever it was, it had waited in silence for decades until now, and Voyager's signal might have been the trigger. Things got stranger when linguists and signal theorists were brought in, because within the anomalous transmission, there were binary segments that didn't originate from Voyager 2's command protocols. When visualized using pattern recognition tools, those segments formed symmetrical shapes, spirals, fractals, and geometric alignments that eerily resembled ancient symbols found on Earth, from Sumerian cuneiform to Nazca glyphs. They weren't just signals. They were glyphs encoded in waveforms. And the deeper scientists looked, the clearer it became. The structure of the message was non-random and eerily consistent with how intelligent beings might encode visual concepts using electromagnetic harmonics. Some speculated that this wasn't just a broadcast. It was a test, a way to measure whether humanity had reached a point where it could even recognize a message buried in such complexity. And that test had just been passed. Voyager had become an interstellar trigger, and someone out there had finally decided to answer back. Then came the final piece. A young physicist at Caltech ran the signal through a deep neural AI designed to simulate cryptographic responses. What came back wasn't just a translation. It was a recurrence. The AI began producing predictive responses, patterns that mirrored the transmission's logic, anticipating what might come next. That would be impossible unless the signal itself was recursive, a loop meant to provoke interaction, like a riddle waiting to be solved. At the same time, Voyager 1, located billions of miles away, registered a magnetic fluctuation similar to Voyager 2's original pulse. 2 spacecraft, 2 anomalies, and a growing sense that these weren't isolated events, but part of something coordinated. The question was no longer, what is out there? It became, why now? Why, after almost 50 years of silence, would something suddenly respond just as humanity reached the cusp of decoding it? Just when scientists thought they had more time to decode the message, Voyager 2 went completely silent. At first, ground control assumed it was a hardware malfunction. After all, the spacecraft is over 46 years old. But then, a wave of identical anomalies struck. Deep Space Network receivers, not just in California, but across Spain and Australia, all reported a perfect loss of signal at the exact same timestamp, 14:37 UTC. The chances of a global simultaneous failure? Practically zero. This wasn't equipment error. Something had cut off the signal from the outside surgically, deliberately, and with timing that matched the very pulse pattern Voyager had detected. But it didn't end there. 5 minutes after the blackout, a narrow-band radio wave hit Earth from the same quadrant of space. It carried no identifiable structure, but its strength matched that of signals we've only ever observed from distant pulsars. Except this wasn't from a neutron star. It was from somewhere near Voyager 2, and it was getting closer. In a classified briefing, data leaked from the Jet Propulsion Laboratory showed a chilling update. A foreign object had begun to alter course in response to Earth's Deep Space Network pings. The trajectory showed the object adjusting slightly every time Earth sent a command or signal burst toward Voyager 2. The implication? This thing wasn't just hearing us. It was studying our method of communication, learning how we ping and probe spacecraft. Worse still, its path was no longer random. It was on an intercept trajectory, not toward Voyager 2, but toward our solar system. Analysts gave it a code name, Echo Lantern. Why? Because it seemed to behave like an entity mimicking light and shadow, communication and silence, turning our own technology into its beacon. And the deeper we looked, the more apparent it became. Voyager 2's signal had become a breadcrumb trail, not for us to find something, but for something to find us. As the mysterious object moved closer to the heliopause, the invisible bubble that separates solar winds from the interstellar medium, a strange thing happened. The solar wind itself bent. Instruments aboard NASA's IBEX probe and ESA's solar orbiter recorded a dip in solar wind pressure, followed by a complete collapse of flow along a narrow corridor stretching out in the direction of Voyager 2. That's never happened before, not in the decades of heliophysical data we've gathered. Solar wind is constant unless interrupted by something massive, like a planetary magnetosphere or an unknown field emitter. And yet, this corridor, now called the solar veil, remained open for 3 hours before collapsing in on itself. And inside that corridor, no radiation, no particles, just silence. It was as if something had opened a door, not through space, but through the physics that govern it. Scientists are now calling it the first evidence of intentional manipulation of solar particles, and the only candidate capable of triggering it was still tracking near Voyager 2. And then, as suddenly as it went silent, Voyager 2 spoke again. But this time, the data wasn't just telemetry. It was encrypted. That's impossible. Voyager doesn't have encryption protocols. It was built in the 1970 seconds, and yet, when Mission Control decoded the binary stream, they found a rearranged version of the original Golden Record transmission, the message we sent into space back in 1977. Except this one was different. The audio samples had been restructured. Human voices played backward, music altered in pitch, star charts reflected in reverse. Some of the coordinates on the cover glyphs no longer pointed to Earth, but to interstellar voids where no stars exist. It was as if Voyager had been hijacked, and its message repurposed not to say, "Here we are," but to say, "We're listening now." When Voyager 2's systems were reviewed after the Golden Record anomaly, engineers made a chilling discovery. Several command subroutines in the spacecraft's onboard computer had been rewritten, not corrupted, not glitched, rewritten. Lines of code that hadn't changed in 46 years had suddenly updated themselves with syntax that Voyager's processors weren't even designed to interpret. Somehow, Voyager was executing instructions outside its original programming. These new routines weren't from Earth. They weren't from NASA. They weren't from any ground-based transmission. They were internal, as if the craft had received a signal from somewhere else and obeyed. The most terrifying part? The rewritten subroutines pointed to one specific function: long-range transmission broadcast, but not toward Earth, toward deep interstellar space. Meaning Voyager wasn't just listening anymore. It was responding, and we have no idea what it said. Within hours of this discovery, several global observatories, including those in Japan, Chile, and Greenland, were ordered to redirect their instruments without explanation. Their targets, 3 specific sectors of deep space, aligned with the vector of Voyager 2's transmission. Simultaneously, encrypted communications leaked from within a European defense agency referenced something called the Wake Protocol. This protocol, long believed to be Cold War fiction, is a multi-agency directive reserved only for confirmed contact scenarios, particularly those involving automated probes activating external responses. And it includes lockdowns of classified satellites, suspension of certain frequency ranges, and the rerouting of telescope arrays toward the outer reaches of the Kuiper Belt. Why? Because once a machine sends a message without human approval, we're no longer in control of first contact, and the world's powers have to assume the worst, that something or someone out there might answer in a way we're not ready to receive. Then, a new anomaly emerged. For a window of exactly 41 minutes, several satellites and ground stations experienced what has been dubbed a temporal echo, a signal loop in which data packets repeated themselves in perfect unison, as if the same moment and telemetry were being played over and over again. But these weren't archives. These were live feeds, distorted in a way that made it seem as though time itself had glitched. During this period, Voyager 2's data, as well as solar observations and telemetry from unrelated probes, looped continuously. Some physicists now believe this wasn't a coincidence, but a controlled ripple potentially caused by a localized space-time distortion near Voyager's location. If true, this means whatever is interacting with the probe isn't just intelligent. It may be capable of manipulating time fields, bending causality, or projecting information across dimensions. And that's why a group of astrophysicists involved in the analysis referred to this incident by a name taken from ancient mythology: Chronos, Bloom. Because if time was touched, then the rules of our universe just changed. And finally, it happened. 2 days after the Chronos bloom, ground stations in Norway and New Zealand, both remote, low-noise monitoring facilities, picked up a signal that originated from interstellar space and passed through our atmosphere. This wasn't a reflection, and it wasn't a bounce from the ionosphere. The signal entered Earth's atmosphere directly, targeted with laser-like precision. It was narrowband, high frequency, and composed of subharmonics that matched the Voyager anomaly. The terrifying part: it ended by embedding itself into terrestrial systems, piggybacking onto oceanic sensors, weather satellites, and even communication buoys across the Pacific. In other words, it didn't just pass through, it stayed. Now, this signal is part of our global data infrastructure. No one knows what it's doing. No one knows what triggered it. But one thing is clear. Whatever Voyager 2 woke up, whatever it contacted, it found a way to reach us. As international focus remained locked on Voyager 2 and its cryptic signal, A team of independent astronomers in Brazil made a discovery no one was expecting. Scanning old infrared sky maps from the 1990 seconds, they detected a faint, cold object on a trajectory that mirrored Voyager 2, but had never been catalogued. It was slow, dark, and completely silent. Further analysis suggested this object had been present in deep space since at least 1981, trailing Voyager 2 from a distance, but never crossing into Earth's radar. The question arose: could this be the source of the anomaly? Was this object using Voyager 2 as a decoy or amplifier? They named it Echo Zero. And what made it even more disturbing was that it wasn't moving randomly. It followed a logarithmic spiral, a shape often associated with natural laws, but also found encoded in certain ancient terrestrial patterns, like seashells, galaxies, and the golden ratio. The implication? That whatever Echo Zero is, it had been traveling with intent, using mathematics not just as a tool of movement, but as a language of camouflage. Then came the intervention of the James Webb Space Telescope, redirected without public announcement, to observe the space between Voyager 2 and the coordinates of the incoming signal. What it found wasn't a single object, but a field of reflective masses barely visible in the infrared spectrum. These masses moved together, not orbiting, but drifting as a cluster, like a school of fish responding to unseen currents. Scientists labeled it a coordinated formation, a pattern never observed in natural objects at that scale or distance. Webb's spectroscopic data revealed something even more shocking. The chemical signatures of these masses included exotic alloys, including elements with half-lives so unstable they should have disintegrated long ago. Yet here they were, stable, clustered, and reflecting our own signals back at us. Suddenly, the narrative changed. This wasn't just about Voyager 2 being observed. It was about Earth being studied, about our machines becoming bait. Soon after the James Webb data leak, cybersecurity agencies worldwide reported a disturbing pattern. Hidden in the backbone of global data traffic among the terabytes of daily noise, they found low-frequency packets that didn't belong to any known protocol. These packets weren't malicious. They didn't trigger alerts, but they persisted, repeating themselves across cloud servers, underwater cables, and even government satellite feeds. A team from MIT isolated the pattern and traced its root signature, the same harmonic profile as Voyager 2's last burst. Let that sink in. A space transmission originally detected billions of kilometers away had entered Earth's digital nervous system not as a virus, but as an embedded signal, like a song with no chorus, always playing in the background, slowly rewriting how machines talk to one another. To some, this was an elegant form of communication. To others, it was the start of digital assimilation. Because when code begins to echo through systems it never touched, the system is no longer ours. And then something stopped. Space, as we know, is filled with background radiation, the hiss of the cosmos, the remnants of the Big Bang. But for 18 minutes, a band of radio telescopes in Chile, South Africa, and Australia all recorded the total disappearance of that cosmic background. Not a drop of static, not a flicker. It was as if the universe had gone silent. After frantic recalibrations, the signal returned. But researchers noticed something deeply unnatural. The background wasn't the same. It was phase-shifted, slightly warped in tone and shape, like a recording that had been paused and then resumed with a slightly different pitch. This change wasn't random. It mirrored the timing and waveform of the last known signal from Voyager 2. That's when a hypothesis emerged among a small but growing number of scientists. What if the silence wasn't a malfunction, but a reset? What if the universe hadn't gone silent at all, but had been overwritten just long enough to insert something new? We sent Voyager 2 into the cosmos as a gesture of hope, a bottle adrift in the cosmic ocean, sealed with the dream that maybe, somewhere, someone would find it. But what if it wasn't found? What if it was expected? What if our message wasn't a whisper into the void, but an invitation answered not by chance, but by design? Because everything from the metallic pulses and rewritten code to the silence of the universe itself points not to coincidence, but to response. Something out there didn't just notice us. It waited. And now it's using our own creations, our machines, our networks to speak back. But the question isn't whether they're listening. It's whether they ever stopped. Maybe Voyager 2 didn't discover something alien. Maybe it activated something ancient, something that always knew we'd come looking, something that always planned to answer. And now that it has, we no longer control the conversation. So the only question that remains is this: what did we awaken?